Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an update on Donald Trump and the use of tariff revenue. We had the recent off year elections. Republicans in two states did not do very well. They underperformed the expected margins. And one of the takeaways was the higher emphasis that people said Donald Trump should put on domestic issues. One of the issues being tariffs and how the tariffs relate to easing the everyday lives of Americans. As we know, tariffs are more of a long term process. When you're talking about a 4 year term, when you're talking about a year away from the midterms, you have to kind of speed up that process. And to do so, you might have to use the tariff revenue, or at least part of the tariff revenue that we make per month, which is around 30, 40. I mean, some estimates say $45 billion per month in tariff revenue off of tariffing the Chinese at around a 50% rate. And a lot of the other countries, the flat 10% tariff negotiated. Some of the countries, it's been 20, 30%, whatever it is, depends on the country and the negotiation. And by the way, also on top of that, we've got other huge investment deals with these countries as part of utilizing the leverage of the tariffs, the Liberation Day tariffs that Trump put on, which were at extremely high percentages, which is the reason we saw the shock small stock market crash. Well, now Trump and his advisor, and they've been talking about this for about 4 or 5 months now. They said, what if we make this a dividend? You want to call it a stimulus? Well, it's really not a stimulus. I mean, it can potentially stimulate the economy, but it is more so a reallocation. And people say, well, what would this do in terms of inflation? We just saw the three stimulus checks back in 2020 and 2021, and we had in 2022 as a result around 9.1% core inflation. Wouldn't this create a high percentage of inflation? Well, because it's a reallocation, it's not like they're printing and minting more fiat. I do think because people would have more disposable income, if it's $2,000, we're going to look into this. I do think it would be at least a little bit inflationary because, again, people get more disposable income. They're going to be spending money on things. The price for things is going to go up. The demand's going to go up because people are going to have the money to buy certain products. And it would, in essence, stimulate the economy, and people would certainly like it. And so this does need to be examined in terms of if they could actually do this. There is also the idea of the Supreme Court possibly not ruling in Trump's direction on if he is even allowed to levy all of these tariffs unilaterally without Congress. And if that gets shot down by the Supreme Court, Trump is going to have to go back to Congress and try and rework some of these tariffs. So he might be trying to put pressure onto the Supreme Court and say, hey, I'm trying to help the American citizens here as they're deliberating whether or not these tariffs are just that have been done unilaterally by Trump and kind of his inner circle onto these countries, specifically China, but also the European Union, Canada, Mexico. You have this President Trump confirmed a $2,000 dividend check to everyone except high income people from tariff revenue. The number that I saw floating around was if you make under $100,000. I'm not sure if that's confirmed or not, but that's a potential idea on what they consider high income. I mean, maybe the high income could be 250K with the level of inflation we've seen, or 400K or something like that. But I don't know exactly what it is. I know people have calculated potential tariff revenue if it is around $300 or $400 billion a year. It's looking like that's not really going to be able to pay for everyone under that makes under 100K to get a $2,000 check or a $2,000 tax refund, which is kind of what it's being approached with. And we thought, well, we were going to get around a $4,000 refund if Doge worked out to where they were able to cut a bunch of government waste. That didn't happen. That was through a tax refund. Now they're saying, and Besant said earlier today, this is potentially going to be through a tax refund rather than a check. Ideally, if you are Trump, I mean, I don't know if they've tested this, but I think people would probably give Trump more credit, like normal people, if it was an actual check. But either way, I mean, you put it in a tax refund and it's the same thing in essence. You can see Trump talking about they're taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down our enormous debt at 37 trillion. So that's another thing people have been talking about. They say the whole idea of these tariffs, well, the number one idea is to force the United States to produce their own things and hopefully bring back quality manufacturing jobs or some form of jobs to the United States. Whether or not AI takes those jobs, we have to be able to produce our own product and not allow our number one adversary to have all the manufacturing power. They've become an absolute manufacturing superpower because of the way capitalism works in the United States. There's an incentive to offshore the jobs because it's cheaper to make in China and the amount of workers that they have and the lower standard and lower quality when it comes to the work conditions in China. You can mass produce things for a lot cheaper there. The question is, well, if the whole idea was to, force the United States to produce its own stuff, which unfortunately, in terms of like an election in 2028 or the midterms in 2026, you'll see like we're seeing the automotive industry move back to the United States, but you're not really going to, I mean, that's like a long-term multi-decade thing, or at least 5 to 10 year thing in terms of getting jobs back into the United States. If you're talking about next year, there's going to have to be an immediate something. And you're talking about, well, you've got tax season in April. Imagine giving these people a $2,000 tax refund in April with the midterms in the fall. You're looking at potentially, I mean, you want to say, well, you're bribing people, but I mean, that's kind of what these elections are at a certain point, doing something for, I mean, they love the micro stuff. They don't really care about the macro. It's all about the micro. That's why none of these presidents really commit to bringing down the debt, because the debt is a macro issue that needs to be solved and it takes decades to do it. They don't care about that. They're not rewarded for that by the voter. The voter rewards micro policy like a $2,000 dividend. And so that's what Trump is really hitting at here. It's the short term, 3 months, 6 months, a year. What can we do domestically to help people bring down the cost of goods, whatever you want to call it? I mean, that's, a whole nother thing, but it's more so, this is really not going to help bring down the cost of goods, but I mean, it certainly would help in terms of stimulating the economy, which already the stock market is doing fine. You do have gas extremely low right now, and inflation is leveled at around 3.1%. This would potentially take up inflation a little bit, but again, if you want to argue in Trump's favor, it is not like a real 2020 or 2021 stimulus. They're not minting more money. It's a reallocation of money made through the Trump tariff. So this is a direct Trump administration plan and tariff that they've levied onto countries that's generated the United States 30, 40, whatever it is, $billion per month, that then would be reallocated and given as a refund, a tax refund, or a dividend check to American citizens potentially making under 100K or whatever it is. Why would they not just pay down the debt? We've got a $2 trillion deficit. It's really $1 trillion. The other trillion is servicing the debt because of the interest rates, although the interest rates now are down, but it's still 4.0%. Why are we not using, if we're raking in now an extra $200 billion annually, why not use that to pay down the debt? Well, part of it is being used to pay down the debt. Even if this goes through, I think Trump still wants to pay down the debt with some of it, but that's a macro thing. You're talking about cutting in 20, 25% of the debt through these tariffs. That's not going to wow people, unfortunately, and that's why there's no crazy incentive to bring down the deficit. I mean, you take a look at the continuing resolution that the Democrats don't want passed because they want more money spent on like temporary programs and the healthcare, and they're proposing another $1 trillion added to the I think debt annually in that continuing resolution. There's just no incentive to do it because the voters don't incentivize it. So you're talking about paying down the debt, and it would be great, but again, it's a long-term thing and people would have to really embrace it. And at this point, with how much things cost, there's just not a lot of embrace of that type of policy. So, you could still use it if you're generating $300 or $400 billion a year and you have a $2 trillion deficit annually. You could certainly chop off a little bit of it. I mean, like 10, 15%. Is that really going to win you many voters relative to people complaining about what things cost? I mean, if people complain about how much things cost, if you give them a $2,000 refund, that's going to quiet a lot of people down. And I'm not saying I like this policy. I know a lot of people have been yelling at Trump with the 50-year mortgage that just came. He just tweeted out something or truthed something out about that yesterday. I'm not even saying this is this great policy. I'm saying it's not surprising that Trump would do this because of the fact that the way tariffs work, you're not going to get much credit in the present time as the tariffs go into place. It's really honestly just the negative, to where if they do create some form of inflation, people say these are terrible, they're the worst thing in the world. Well, I mean, that could be classified honestly as healthy inflation, or at least inflation that is kind of necessary for the United States to be able to onshore jobs back to the United States. And that's, by the way, now we've got Powell saying, oh, now that I admit the tariffs are causing inflation, But even if you want to say that, I mean, it's like 3.1%. This is marginal, and it's certain sectors is where it's causing the inflation. It's not like we're dealing with 4 or 5%, and inflation has been hovering around 3% the last 3 months anyways. So it's not like we're getting this catastrophic, terrible inflation data, and we are growing with the quarterly GDP. I mean, the last 2 quarters that they project, quarter 4, I think it's like 3.5. Quarter 3 was like 3.5. And we had the contraction Q1, Q2 was positive, Q3 was positive, and I think Q4 is going to be positive. So, we've been growing, our economy's been growing, and so they can't even do the whole recession talk. I mean, people already say we're already in a recession, but either way, that's really the situation when it comes to this dividend. I don't know if it's really going to happen. If it does happen, maybe it is in the form of some type of tax refund that comes in April, which would signal to voters and everyday Americans that Trump has created this wealth for you, in essence, because of the aggressive tariffs. This is something the Democrats would not have done. They would not have tariffed these countries at this rate to where we would be able to make around $35 or $40 billion a month. I don't even know if it maths out to be able to cover a $2,000 dividend for everyone making under 100K, if that's what it is. Maybe it's everyone making under 75K. But it's going to be something like that. And it is most Americans still. So, but again, then it's like, well, do they have the funds? How much is that really going to cost for every single person making under that amount? $2,000 per person. Obviously, it's many, I think it's hundreds of billions of dollars. It's like $250, $300 billion, which is potentially going to be the tariff revenue. So you're talking about just giving the money to the people rather than using it to pay down the debt, basically, because they don't think paying down the debt will really generate them a ton of votes for the midterms. It's something along those lines is what I'm guessing. And this was always going to be an issue. I don't know the exact number they're making per month. I'd have to look at that. I mean, I think it's like 35 billion, if I had to guess, per month in tariff revenue. But obviously Trump is going to say in this, oh, I want to, pay down the debt. And then he says a dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high income people, will be paid to everyone. So that's what Trump says, not including high income people. I mean, what is that? I think it's under 100K, but maybe it's under 400K, but I don't know if they're not going to be able to afford it if it's under 400K, because I don't think they generate enough of tariff revenue to be able to pay that much, if I had to guess. But this is just the update. And so Trump, again, he's talked about this many times. You had the 2 elections in Virginia and New Jersey. It's not necessarily the Republicans lost. It's that they lost by the margins that they did. And everyone's like, well, Trump has to focus domestically on these issues and on costs and things like that. Well, this is a way to help people in terms of costs. Just give them $2,000. And, they'll say, well, didn't you guys just say this contributed to inflation? Well, they minted more money and then gave it to people. This is a reallocation of money that we would have just paid down the debt with. Yes, it's not ideal for inflation, but it's not this catastrophic thing where they're just printing more money and giving it to people. It's the reallocation of funds, which, again, yes, it would be higher inflation. If you're going to pay down the debt versus giving people disposable income, yeah, it's probably going to create some degree of higher inflation, but it's not going to be 9% or even 5%. It's going to be minimal inflation increase, I would expect. And Trump is right. There's been very little inflation. I mean, it was like 2.3, 2.4 at the lows earlier this year. Now it's at 3.1, but it's been hovering, ebbing and flowing around 2.9, 3.0, 3.1. And trueflation is even lower because of how cheap crude oil is. That's the energy. And when trueflation includes that and the core inflation doesn't, the trueflation is like, it was like 2.3, 2.2 the last time I saw it. So it's very low. So either way, guys, this is just the update. We'll have to see what ends up happening with this dividend as potentially a way for Trump to, you're not going to say bribe people here. I would say help him win, the midterms. The Republicans win the midterms, just the way these tariffs work. And also, you do have this massive ruling. Who knows what happens with these tariffs? You have the Supreme Court, and it's a Republican Supreme Court, but it's looking dicey. And Trump said he was going to listen to the hearings, and I mean, he's really kind of caring for this Supreme Court ruling, and this may not go in his direction. You look at, I saw betting, it was like 50-50 the last time I saw it, and so that was a while ago. I'm not sure if it's looking too good, and then he'd have to go back to Congress and try and rework everything in terms of the tariffs. If, it's like unconstitutional for Trump to levy all of these tariffs, well, that's a bit complicated. The tariffs have already went in, and we've already made deals, investment deals from countries because of the way the tariffs were levied. And there's still tariffs on a lot of these countries of just a flat 10%. So do those all go away? Do the investment deals that we've made from the tariffs into the United States, do those go away as well? That becomes a problem. So I'm hoping that's not how they're going to rule. And maybe this is Trump saying, please allow me to keep the tariffs. I want to give money to the people. And this is always, because they had said the Doge checks, the Doge dividend, and that was obviously a failure. But that shows you the administration wants to do something like this. So this is what Trump proposes, and we'll see what happens. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.